This is the reason your next cruise might hand you a restaurant bill, even though the entire point of a cruise is that the food already came with the ticket. Across almost every major cruise line operating today, dining splits cleanly into two worlds: the complimentary restaurants bundled into your fare, and the specialty restaurants that quietly cost extra, and the distance between those two worlds has turned into one of the biggest sources of confusion for anyone planning a trip. This is the reason your next cruise might hand you a restaurant bill, even though the entire point of a cruise is that the food already came with the ticket. Across almost every major cruise line operating today, dining splits cleanly into two worlds: the complimentary restaurants bundled into your fare, and the specialty restaurants that quietly cost extra, and the distance between those two worlds has turned into one of the biggest sources of confusion for anyone planning a trip. Almost every cruise line organizes its food around two categories. The first one, complimentary or included dining, covers everything that arrives with your ticket. On nearly any ship, that means a main dining room, usually shortened to MDR, where you get table service and a menu that rotates daily across several courses, alongside a buffet and casual spots like poolside grills, pizzerias, and cafes. Royal Caribbean anchors its included venues around the Windjammer Buffet and that main dining room. Room service used to live comfortably inside this included world, and a few lines still treat it that way, but the fees have crept in. $7.95 plus an 18% gratuity is what Royal Caribbean now charges, while Norwegian asks $9.95 for its all-day menu, or $4.95 for a continental breakfast. Category 2 is specialty dining, and these restaurants operate on a completely different premise. Picture smaller, themed, reservation-only rooms with more ambitious menus, charging you to walk through the door, sometimes through a flat cover charge, and sometimes a la carte, where every item lands on your tab. According to a 2026 guide from cruisebooking.com, the range stretches from $15 all the way past $100 per person. A middle option sits between those two, and the cruise lines promote it relentlessly, which is the dining package that bundles several specialty meals together at a discount. Save up to 40%, Royal Caribbean's own website promises, and the more you dine, the more you save. That same page points out that kids ages 6 to 12 eat at the specialty restaurants for $14.99, while kids 5 and under eat free. Royal Caribbean alone juggles an unlimited package, a 3-night version, a 5-night version, and a Chops Plus package, and Royal Caribbean blog pegs that unlimited option at roughly $24 per person per day on a 7-night sailing. That's the machine as it runs right now, but it didn't always look this way, and the backstory explains why cruise lines cling to it so tightly. Paying extra for a special meal at sea isn't some modern invention, because the Grand Ocean liners pulled the same trick. Back in 1936, the Queen Mary featured an extra charge venue called the Verandah Grill, and the Queen Elizabeth followed with its own in 1940. The QE2 carried the tradition forward into the 1970s, with a grill room that charged a cover of 75 cents per person. The modern version, the specialty restaurant we'd recognize today, traces straight back to Norwegian Cruise Line. Le Bistro, which opened aboard the Norwegian Seaward in 1988, generally gets credit as the first contemporary specialty restaurant ever to sail. Everything shifted in the year 2000. Norwegian rolled out a concept it branded freestyle cruising, and freestyle dining made its debut on May 28th of that year aboard the Norwegian Sky. Gone were the fixed dining times and assigned tables, and that's when the idea of extra charge alternative restaurants, sitting right beside the included ones, became normal. Places carrying names like Le Bistro and Cagney's Steakhouse. 3 years later, the trend took its next leap. Crystal Cruises joined forces with celebrated chef Nobu Matsuhisa in 2003 and opened what it billed as the only Nobu on the ocean. Nobu described the move in his own words, saying he brought the concept of Matsuhisa, with exactly the same menu and the same service, to Crystal, and that handshake lit the fuse on the celebrity chef era at sea. From there, the build-out only sped up, and by the 2000s, designers were drawing up new ships with anywhere from 10 to 30 dining venues, turning the food itself into a headline feature of cruise marketing. Which leaves an obvious puzzle. If the meals already come included, why would cruise lines pour so much energy into restaurants designed to charge you more? The answer comes down to money, and the figures run larger than most passengers ever suspect. Onboard spending isn't some minor sideline for cruise lines. It's a central engine of how they earn, and dining drives a big share of it. Carnival Corporation makes the clearest case. For its fiscal year closing on November 30th, 2024, Carnival posted total revenue of $25 billion. Its annual filing with the SEC spelled out, word for word, that the company pulled 34% of its cruise revenues from onboard and other goods and services in 2024. Run the math, and that's roughly $8.6 billion, climbing 14% over the prior year. Royal Caribbean Group echoes the pattern. Total revenue for 2024 reached $16.48 billion, and the company's annual filing stated that onboard and other revenues delivered roughly a 30% of total revenues that year, easing down from 31% in 2023 and 34% in 2022. 30% of that haul works out to around $5 billion. Jason Liberty, the company's chief executive, wrapped up the year back in January 2025 by calling 2024 exceptional, the kind of year that drove elevated demand across their leading brands. Norwegian Cruise Line Holdings rounds out the picture with record total revenue of $9.48 billion in 2024, a jump of about 11%. Somewhere between 30 and 33% of that came from onboard and other revenue. A company release from May 2024 noted that onboard revenue per capacity day climbed 11% in the quarter against 2023, showing what it called broad-based strength across every revenue stream. Line all three of the biggest cruise companies up side by side, and onboard spending consistently lands around 30 to 34% of total revenue. Food and beverage gets described as the single largest onboard revenue department, feeding off drink packages, specialty dining, and onboard beverages. Once that clicks into place, the whole two-tier dining system stops looking like a luxury afterthought, because those specialty restaurants are a deliberate, high-margin business, which means the next thing worth examining is what that business charges you to sit down. These numbers move constantly. They swing by ship and by sailing, and several lines run dynamic pricing, so treat everything that follows as a snapshot rather than a fixed menu. With that caveat in place, here's how the prices look across 2024 through 2026. Chops Grill, Royal Caribbean's signature steakhouse, runs somewhere around $46 to $56 for dinner, stretching towards $65 on the premium ships, with lunch landing closer to $18 to $25. Passengers clearly adore the place. Out of 1,115 votes in a Royal Caribbean dining poll, Chops Grill claimed the title of most popular specialty restaurant with 28% of the vote. $200 per person, plus an 18% gratuity, is what sits at the very top of Royal Caribbean's range, and that's the Empire Supper Club, aboard Icon of the Seas. For that price, you settle into an 8-course meal inside a room seating just 38 people under a formal dress code. Cagney's, Norwegian's steakhouse, shifted to a $60 fixed cover as of 2025, which buys you 3 appetizers, an entree, 2 sides, and 3 desserts, with an optional $20 lobster add-on riding on top of a 20% gratuity. Le Bistro, the restaurant that kicked off this entire story back in 1988, also charges that same $60 cover. Princess pushed its prices up hard. The Crown Grill Steakhouse, listed at $39 on its 2023 menu, jumped to $55 across the fleet, or $60 on the newer Sun and Star Princess, with that increase landing on April 15th, 2025. Over on Celebrity, the high end belongs to Le Voyage by Daniel Boulou, which runs $75 a la carte, or $125 for a 5-course tasting, plus a 20% service charge. Carnival's Fahrenheit 555 Steakhouse sits at $52 per person in 2025, nudged up from $49 the year before. Disney occupies a tier all its own. $55 covers brunch or dinner as of June 2025, but Remy demands $145 for dinner, and Enchante matches that $145 figure for lunch or dinner alike. Even Disney gets eclipsed by the luxury lines. La Dame on Silversea runs $60 per person across most ships, yet on the Silver Nova that same restaurant leaps to $160 per person. And once you fold in wine pairings, the potential bill creeps toward $300 per person. Those figures make one thing plain: specialty dining stopped being a small upcharge a while ago. And the direction all those numbers keep heading has cooked up some real tension. Rising prices defined 2025, alongside a swelling feeling among passengers that they were being nickel and dimed. Princess already showed its hand. On April 15th, 2025, the line raised its specialty dining prices by 22 to 33%, and that same June, Disney lifted its adult dining prices across the fleet in a staggered rollout. Pressed for an explanation, a Disney Cruise Line spokesperson framed the increases as the company continuing to enhance the overall dining experience and menu selections. The change that truly lit the fuse came from Norwegian. Starting with sailings on or after September 26, 2025, NCL tacked a $5 fee onto a second entree in the main dining room, which made it the first major line to charge for a second entree inside the included restaurant, where Carnival only starts charging on the third item, and MSC charges on the second on U.S. sailings. That fee slipped quietly into the fine print of the main dining room menu. Norwegian also rolled out a $10 no-show fee on specialty reservations for guests 13 and older who fail to cancel at least 2 hours ahead. People bristled. One passenger, quoted in September 2025, fumed that the dining room has always been all-inclusive, that they'd cut back on quality, and that while nobody needs 14 meals, a $5 charge struck them as insane. Not everyone landed on that side, though. A commenter over on Cruise Critic argued the opposite, calling NCL one of the best in terms of paying for exactly what you'll use. That single $5 entree fee opens onto a far larger argument, one that's been quietly simmering for years, about whether the free food is getting worse on purpose. Careful footing matters here, because this is exactly where perception and proven fact start to blur into each other. A widespread feeling has taken hold among passengers that the complimentary main dining room food, the portions, and the variety have all slipped, even as the paid-up charges multiply. Cruise Blog observed in December 2025 that some cruisers have watched dining quality decline in recent years, chalking it up to cost-cutting. Precision is the thing to hold on to, though. No cruise line has ever admitted it, and no rigorous published study has ever proven that any company deliberately degrades its included food to herd people toward the paid restaurants. The frustration runs real and widely shared, yet for now it stays passenger sentiment rather than documented policy, and that gap matters, because the two-tier system genuinely manufactures the appearance of that incentive, whether or not anyone planned it that way. What sits firmly on the record is the shift in the older flat fee model, where one cover charge bought you a free eating evening, drifting at some lines toward a la carte pricing that bills you for each item. Cruisers have described that change, in their own words, as something that really gives the feel of being nickeled and dimed. That covers the half of the industry, busy stacking on charges, but a whole other half is rowing in the opposite direction. Plenty of cruise lines refuse to play this game, betting instead on the exact reverse. Virgin Voyages offers the cleanest example of that bet. Its ships carry more than 20 eateries, skip the buffet entirely, and drop the traditional main dining room, folding all of those restaurants into the fare with zero specialty cover charges. Even the non-alcoholic drinks come included. A handful of premium items cost extra, along with a $50 dinner cabaret experience called Another Rose. But those stand as rare exceptions rather than the rule, and Cruise Critic has recognized Virgin Voyages for that all-included approach. The luxury lines tilt the same direction. Beef Bar on Crystal Cruises, which launched in late 2024, carries no surcharge at all, because these lines bake the cost of dining into a higher fare up front instead of nickel and diming you once you're aboard. Two genuinely different philosophies now compete inside the same industry. One charges a base fare and then sells you upgrades. The other charges more at the start and includes nearly everything, which carries us straight to the question that probably brought you here in the first place. The honest answer hinges on what you're stacking it against. Paying extra does tend to buy you real things, higher quality, a more intimate room, and in plenty of cases, a price that undercuts what the same meal would cost on land. The Points guy made the point neatly, noting that NCL's Onda by Scarpetta serves a 3-course meal for $73, against roughly $95 for the equivalent at the Scarpetta restaurant in New York City. Flip the coin and the downsides surface fast. It can simply pile on too much food, and the package structure breeds a quiet pressure to overeat, just to squeeze out your money's worth. Even inside a package marketed as all-you-can-dine, the upcharges lurk, because Royal Caribbean's unlimited dining package slaps a $15 surcharge on the Izumi Hibachi experience, on top of what you already handed over. Seasoned cruisers lean on a quieter trick, too. Cruise lines hand out onboard credit, and many travelers funnel that credit straight into specialty dining, which makes those meals feel free, even though the money was always real. Whether it pays off comes down to your own arithmetic and your own appetite. Value 1 or 2 standout meals in a quieter setting, and the cover charge can read as a genuine bargain next to fine dining back home. Stay perfectly content with the included food, and refuse to track line items on a vacation, and you can sail without ever paying a single specialty charge. All of which loops us back to where we began. A cruise sells itself on the promise that the food is included, and that promise still mostly holds, because the main dining room, the buffet, and the casual spots arrive with your fare on nearly every major line. Parked right alongside that included food, though, sits a deliberate, high-margin business, the specialty restaurants, now stretching from a $15 cover all the way up to $200 a head, and even $300 with wine on a luxury ship. That business helps explain why onboard spending makes up roughly 30 to 34% of revenue at the 3 biggest cruise companies, and it's expanding fast enough that Princess raised prices 22 to 33% in a single year, while Norwegian started charging $5 for a second entree in the supposedly free dining room. The industry now stands split between 2 visions of how dining should work: the pay-as-you-go model and the all-included model. As a passenger, the single most valuable move you can make is understanding which one you're booking before you ever set foot on board. On a cruise, the line between what's free and what costs extra is precisely where the real money gets made, and now you know exactly where that line falls.